Hello, everyone, and good afternoon to the East Coast, and good morning to the West Coast, and good day to all those in between. We're very excited to offer this webinar on property management today. We've done a lot of webinars in the past, and typically we've been doing a lot on just platforms like search, social, Snapchat, display, connected TV. But lately we've been focusing on some of our core categories, and we're excited to have this one on property management. We've done auto and education. This one we're putting a little twist on the name. So get a new lease on your digital strategy. But before I get too far into that, just to cover a couple of logistics on this, if you have any questions, we will try to answer them, but as time permits, and you can submit those usually on the right-hand side. There's a box that pops up. You can submit those there. And if we run out of time and we don't get to them, we will answer those in a follow-up email. And also in that follow-up email, we'll include a recording of the session. So if you're sitting in your office or wherever you might be and you get interrupted and you miss something, don't fret. We're going to be sending out a recording on this. So with that, I am Bob Batchelor, and I'm the Director of Customer Experience here. But this really isn't about me today. I am just simply facilitating it. Our stars of the show are Murray Warnoff. He's our Director of Research and Consumer Insights. He has more experience in digital than I do. And on his 20 plus, you should focus on the plus side of that because he's really getting up there. No, just kidding. Anyway, typical numbers guy, married with 2.7 children. And then really our big star, happy to have Natalie Stahl. Natalie is immersed in this category. She lives and breathes property management every day. So very excited to have her on the call. Her breadth, her depth of knowledge, her expertise on this is going to shine through. Super happy to have you, Natalie. She's into snow. We live in Denver. A little bit of travel and Chopin, if you need a little piano for yourself. So with that, here we're going to talk about, and Murray and Natalie are going to walk us through these fine subjects. We've got some market insights that Murray's going to take us through. We're going to use a farming analogy to talk about this, and farming for success, and full funnel strategies of farming through the funnel and all the way from top to bottom of the funnel, and really the importance of that top of the funnel aspect and how that flows all the way through. Then we're going to talk about steps to increase ROI, tools to get you started, and maybe even throw in a case study or two. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Murray.
Bob, I thank you, sir, as always, for inviting me to these. I tend to learn as much from our participants in their questions and what and follow-up than I think I'm helping anybody. I will never know the property management business as well as you guys do. But what we do here is track a number of things directly related to your category. And so those are some of the things I want to share, things that have come up that we've seen. Again, Bob, I thank you. I forgot what a great sense of humor Bob has. He was asking me last week, he goes, Murr, you're an advocate for free speech. You believe in free speech. I said, yeah, of course. He goes, great, you're giving one Thursday. So here we go. Okay. So what I know is that when you look at all expenditures, when it comes to rentals in the United States of America, we're talking between $504 and $512 billion, $500 billion. This is an amazing, important part of the overall economy, not just for where people live and to put a roof over their head, but what happens, again, regarding that dollar. We see every single year some of the opportunities and challenges that are facing property management decision makers, right? We know many renters desire green and sustainable renting housing options, and that didn't exist 20 years ago, really. We see many young people really struggling with debt, a lot of it college-oriented, and putting off the purchase of the home, but that's an opportunity. That is an opportunity. The weird thing here is we're talking about, if I'm using your vernacular, it's the starting out singles and the young adult roommates who don't necessarily translate into perma renters, long-term renters. We know baby boomers do want to downsize, but they're very wary of what's going on with mortgages. And I'm going to come back to mortgages because we all heard about the 1/4 point decrease in the federal lending rate, and that's not going to have the effect that it has had in the past. We see rental rates on the rise. As a matter of fact, renters paid more money last year than at any other time in history. And we did it with fewer renters than the previous year. Again, that's because of the rental rise increases. And then we feel, what happens with pets, and I really don't want to get into that too much unless you deal specifically with this. Happy to provide any follow-up or anything along those lines that I can. One of the things we look at is what's going on with adults and their residents. And what we know is that there is something like 250 million adults 18 plus in the U.S. There are about 140 million individual households, and we know there are about 44 million renters. And when we look at adult renters, now if you want to know how many individual households this is, roughly divide by 2, right? Because there are almost 2 people per household. But what we see is if you look back in 2012, where there were 65.7 million renters, right? And that includes renting a single family home, renting an apartment, renting anything. That was less than 30%, about 27, 28% of all adults in the U.S. And then around 2015 or so, we hit 30%. And last year, 2018 ended with over 1/3 of all adults being renters. What's happened in the housing market since the recession, where they lost anywhere from a third to half of their unit sales, and that's right. We all remember what happened, and those employees in construction did not come back. A lot of them never coming back, and this boded well for the apartments and renters. What we also saw, again, about the 1/4 point decrease in the federal lending rate. Rates used to average around 6.5%. It's been around 4.5 for quite some time now, and you're not going to see a big surge in people running out to buy homes. That's not going to happen here. And so what we saw last year, the year before, as far as beneficial to the property management, should continue in the very near future. All right, moving on. Again, this is not units or households. This is adults or people. And I wanted you to see that when it comes to those who rent, 51%, over half, are specifically residing inside an apartment. I bring this up because that was not the case 3 years ago. It was less than half. But it was exactly 3 years ago that we passed the tipping point, and now apartments account for 51%, over half of all adult renters. You'll see single-family house at 29%. In pure number, it may be up, but as a percentage, it's actually down just a touch. Same thing with townhomes. Same thing with condos. We see a slight increase with mobile and manufactured, but otherwise everything else is down, but the share of renters to apartments has gone up. And now this is really where I spend the bulk of my day when I deal with people like Natalie, and we talk about how do we ensure effectiveness of a campaign, or we're looking at platforms that best serve target groups. And so I wanted to share this. This is a little different than you may get from a media company, where they're talking about 18 to 24, 25 to 34. In our business category, it made more sense to look at people in their 20s, 20 to 29, people in their 30s, 30 to 39. So this is a little different than a media company will talk to you about audiences and whatnot. So I wanted to point out a couple of things, right? When we look at the people in their 20s versus the people in their 70s and everything in between, right? How many adults are in each household? And what you'll see is that it's around 1.7, 1.8 up until the age of 49. And once we pass that, then we see that starting to go down. Why? Well, we see, some separated people, divorced people, widowed people, right? Then I look at number of employees inside each individual household of those who rent. And again, very similar, but you'll see the drop-off occurring a little quicker. You'll see a few more people employed in the average rented unit, 1.4 for those in their 20s, and then you see that start going down again, almost for the exact same reasons. You'll see children actually peaks for those people in their 30s, right? But you know this. How long have you been in your current residency? When we look at the people in their 20s, they're saying on average about 2.5 years. People in their 30s, almost 4. And then as people get older, they're more likely to be, I think, what I call the perma renters, right? They become a bigger percent of the total. There's your household income with the young adults, and you've got 1.5 people employed. That explains the 51,000 total household income for that unit. You'll see it goes up for those people in their 30s, and then again starts going down in the 40s. You'll see the breakout of pets. You'll see some Prism Premier segments. Now, I don't use these for targeting. I use these for messaging, because if I want to talk to someone who might want to join my facility for a reason that a younger person might, I will talk to striving singles and midlife success. If I'm talking to an older segment who's scared to death of buying another home, but they would be very comfortable in my apartment complex, especially with the amenities I have, well, then I'm going to craft my message to include cautious couples, sustaining seniors, right? And then I also wanted to point out, we asked these people of all these age groups who rent, what do you plan to do in the next 12 months? So I wanted you to see that those people in their 20s, 14% said, I plan to buy a home. You'll see it goes up a tick when we hit the people in their 30s, right? So what you see is that these young people are not in a rush to necessarily leave an apartment, right? Now, whether or not they stay in the apartment they're in, that's a different question. And as you see, as that moves up, as we start getting more closer and closer to the perma renters, the likelihood of them buying a house or leaving go down and down and down. Okay. Now, the reason I said, gee, what about all those young people who 86% said, no, I'm not buying a house, no way. What we see is that 1/3 of them still plan on moving, right? So they're not necessarily locked in. Here's another set of data, and I'm talking specifically about digital, because this is where we saw the biggest changes and shifts over the past 5 to 10 years. So I wanted to share what happens regarding devices. Okay, so you know that those 20-year-olds are all holding smartphones, 95% of them to be exact, and very similar with the 30s group. But I wanted you to see even those people aged 50 to 59, better than 8 in 10 of them are holding smartphones. That was not the case 5 years ago, where it was basically people 20 to 39. But then we saw the 40-year-olds, then we saw the 50-year-olds, and even look at the 70-year-olds. Anyone 70 and older, over half of them are holding a smartphone. Smartphone is it. Ever since it passed desktop a couple of years ago, you'll see desktop fairly strong with some groups, right? But it's half the size of the number of people holding smartphones. The other thing I wanted to point out is the number of different types of devices. Those young people, they're not just holding a smartphone. Over half of them are also on a tablet. 86% are also on average, these folks are holding, right, a number of different devices. And as you get older, you'll see the number of different devices go down. It's not that it's that they were the last to adapt. It's not that they're not going to it, because these numbers keep rising each and every single year. And then specifically, you know, are you going online? 98% of the youngest renters, 97% of renters in their 30s, 92% of those in their 40s, 8 in 10 of those in their 50s. And these numbers were not there just 5 years ago. Regarding time spent, the average is about 9, 10, 11 hours, and you'll see that's where everyone falls, with a slight tail off with those over the age of 50. And then regarding what are they doing? Well, those online, they're going to Google. 93%, 91% of those in their 20s and 30s respectively. They're using social. 8 out of 10 of those in their 20s and 30s. 7 in 10 of those in their 40s and 50s. And it's not just social. Of those using social, the vast majority specifically go to Facebook. 90% of the 20-year-olds who use social are on Facebook. 9 out of 10 of those in their 30s. 8 out of 10 of those in their 40s. 7 and 10 of those in their 50s. Now, when you start talking about those in their 20s, all of a sudden showing up in the ranking, but again, second to Facebook, are things like Snapchat, Instagram, with high compositions of these individuals. But Facebook overall, far and beyond the leader, no matter what age group. And then I read an article this week. It came from Ad Age, and I'm just saying this bluntly. I'm not trying to prove a point or anything. Ad Age just reported that broadcast TV lost 1/4 of their youngest viewers in the last 2 years. And they're citing specifically the ability to stream and get video content via the internet. So I wanted you to see something that really didn't exist about 10 years ago. 73% of those in their 20s, 7 in 10 of those in their 30s, 6 out of 10 of those in their 40s, they're streaming. They are streaming. So anyway, wanted to share that with everybody. Only 1 or 2 slides left. I'm almost out of time. But I wanted to look at what purchase motivators are in the mindset of renters. Now, this isn't broken out by age or geography or anything like this. But when these people act as consumers, they tend to buy stuff that, 1, makes them feel comfortable, 2, healthy, and 3, relaxed. Where they over-index, where they're more likely to base a decision versus total adults, a little bit things that make them feel a little productive. But the big indexes, right, 118, they want to feel successful, they want to feel attractive. A little different than total adults across the U.S. The only last thing I wanted to talk about was the process itself and what happens. Property management marketers have told me in past years that renters know within 2 weeks whether or not they're willing to re-sign the lease. They know this. And so we wanted to look at what are they basing their decision on. Well, obviously, whether we're talking about a car or a house or anything when it comes to renting apartments, the cost is, right? That's how you define where you're going to look. Location, right? The majority of people, when they move, stay within the same county. After that, they're leaving the market altogether. Half said the community environment itself. So again, they know in short order whether or not they plan to re-sign. Now, the reason I bring that up is because I looked at people who rent in the U.S. And what I found is that each month, this month, 1/5 of all renters have gone online to look at real estate listings. They're already looking. With that, I'd like to turn it over, I believe, to Natalie.
Hey, Murray. Well, thanks for the tee up and the awesome data. And Bob, thank you for the introduction. So super happy to be on the line here with everyone today. We're going to go over some good content, some high-level strategy stuff, as well as some more granular technical aspects within the property management space. So obviously, we know it's a very crowded marketplace. So there are a lot of brand products and platforms competing for your potential renters' attention. And so, whether you're a marketing manager, a community manager, an investor, whatever your role is, it's important to understand, what is the proper mix of all of these different platforms? What are the proper ingredients to bake the perfect cake that is someone signing a lease, and not only that, but renewing as well. So we're going to use a really simple analogy today. Digital marketing can become very complex. There are a lot of acronyms, SEO, SEM, PPC, cost per click, all kinds of different stuff that can be a little bit confusing if you're not living and breathing in this industry all the time. So we're going to use something that's really simple, farming to harvest occupancy. So a common misperception in this space is that someone goes to Google, types in 1-bedroom apartment for rent, clicks on the ad, goes to the website, clicks apply, and then done, right? That's what everyone wants, and that's what the common misperception is. But that is not how people shop. And as the digital space gets more complex, there are more digital touch points. So this is even a simplified example. So let's say we've got Jack and Jane, they're watching Survivor on CBS, and they're, thinking about moving, and they see a display ad, and, they start to say like, well, that pool looks awesome. We don't have a pool like that. So then a little bit later, they go to Google, search for apartments in the area, check out floor plans, maybe click through to a website, but they're not super serious. Later on, they're on Instagram, they get retargeted in their feed, maybe go back to the original community website. And then they're like, getting a little bit more serious a few months down the road, go to Zillow or another ILS, do a search there, maybe go back to the website and say, all right, let's take a tour. And then they say, well, let's make sure that we're making a good decision. So let's go back to Google, see what else is in the area, and then let's do some comparison. And then they go into one of the properties, they schedule a tour. And of course, the good old question, how did you hear about us? Which I'll quickly go into detail, but they say they found the property online, find Lease at a community, and stays there, for 3 years, and they tell their friends it's fantastic. So that's a simplified journey of, a potential renter. So as you can see here, like, which channel would we give credit to? Is it the Instagram ad where they got retargeted? Is that the thing? Or is it this initial display ad? Or is it this last, visit to the website? And this example, the best way to understand it, how people shop, excuse me, is if you ask someone how they got a hangover, they're going to say, oh, well, it was the last shot. I really shouldn't have done that. Last shot of tequila. But no, it's actually all the shots. It's the beers. It's the being in the sun. It's the not eating food. It's the not sleeping enough. And those all go into, you know, the hangover. So when you are talking about signing a lease, it's the same thing. There's not one thing that results in a lease signed. So it's important to take that into consideration when you're looking at different attribution models, for example. You know, some CRMs, they use first touch attribution. So in that case, it would be the display ad that gets all the credit for that entire journey. Last touch attribution, that means that the Google ad gets credit for the full journey. You know, looking at multi-touch, you're saying all of these things have the same weight and they all go into it. But then these should probably be weighted differently. Like maybe a retargeting ad is not, you know, didn't have as much of an effect as the PPC ad. So there's a lot of different variables that go into this decision. So really looking at your marketing from an omni-channel perspective is really key to making sure that you're capitalizing on all the technology that we have available to us today. So in terms of tools of the trade, you know, pick, shovel, we have some older tools that people still use, which is fine, but what we're going to talk about today are, you know, some of the new tools that we have, advances in technology. And so, you know, some of those search, social, programmatic, we'll go into a little bit more detail about. You can kind of think of these as like your equipment. Like this is what you're using to farm those renters. So when you use those tools and effectively use them in the correct manner, you know, you are harvesting a greater yield. So we're going to go through today, you know, the different stages of the renter's journey: awareness, engagement, consideration, decision. Keep in mind that people bounce around in this journey as well. So it's not like just A to Z journey. People might, you know, be engaged and then they kind of drop off, and then they might be considering and almost make a decision, and then they don't want to do it and they go back to the awareness stage. So one key point, if you take away just a handful of things today, is that if you focus on the journey of a renter and not just the last point of touch, you will get a better harvest. That's really, really, really important, especially in this space. So when you focus on the channels that are only at the end, this causes A, an overemphasis on a single platform, and B, it costs you more money. So when you're farming, you know, you want to obviously have the, you know, the best, you want to be planting in the right places. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. So you want to make sure that you're in the right places and that you're doing it effectively. So using geo-targeting, you know, using the data sources that you have, making sure that you have, you know, that you're targeting and that everything is obviously in line with fair housing, and using all of those tools. So when we talk about, you know, your planting, and you obviously want to prepare the soil. So you want to make sure that you have a proper website, right? You could send traffic all day long to a website that's qualified traffic. If your website isn't great, it's not going to convert those into phone calls, form fills, tours, and you're not going to get the leases. So making sure that you do have the right setup for that. And also very important, you want to make sure you create awareness for your community before they begin their search. So if I ask the majority of you, how long is the renter's journey, you know, potential renter's journey, before they, thank you, got some water here so I can stop coughing. So if you ask someone, if I ask you, the majority of you are going to say, well, the process is 60 days. But the process is not 60 days. That's when they put in their notice. They start looking way before 60 days. Me personally, I know I drove by a community that I loved, and I didn't want to break my current lease, but I kept looking at it, and I was like, you know, one day I'm going to move in there. The place looks awesome. And then a couple years later, I'd always see their marketing because I just thought the place was absolutely beautiful. Love the pool, love the views. And so then for me, when it was time to move, I knew exactly where I was going. I put in my notice, already knew where I was going. And so there was really no final research during that stage after I already put in my notice. I started planning for, you know, what I'm going to be doing in the new place. So keep that in mind as well. So, you know, a few channels that are great to build that awareness. Social and display are fantastic. Display is very upper funnel tactic for building awareness. Social is great for awareness. It can also be a full funnel solution depending on the campaign type that you're running. So here you want to have messaging that is, you know, getting people engaged. So you're not going to, and I see this so often, you're not going to have a display ad that says apply now. Like people, they haven't even seen anything. They don't want to apply now. They want to check out the property. They want to start to visualize, you know, where they're going to be living. The other reason that these two channels are so great for this particular vertical is because they're visual. So this isn't like someone's buying a calculator or duct tape or Band-Aids, right? They're moving there. Like this is really, really, really important to them. And so it's a very visual aspect. So if you just wait for PPC, you know, and that's where all your marketing is, it's a 3-line text ad, you know, maybe 6 if you have extensions. It's just text. There's nothing emotional about it, just meat and potatoes. You know, here's a special, here's where we are, you know, here's a couple amenities and, you know, call to action. This, I mean, even the ad on the right, you're like, oh, heck yeah, that's where I'm going to hang out after work and watch the view after a stressful day. That makes such a different connection with the user as opposed to just a text ad. So when you plant these little seeds, when someone goes back to Google and they are ready to do their search and they're like, oh yeah, that's the place I saw that had the amazing deck. They already have that point of context before they're going to Google. So they usually convert higher on Google and they usually convert higher on the website as well. So really key, I'll go into a case study that we did about this, but one super quick thing I just wanted to bring up. So August 19th, Facebook newsfeed ads are going to change. So Facebook doesn't allow, you know, a certain amount of text over the ads. And so this is something that we are obviously already on top of for our clients, but this is going to be changing. So anyway, just a little tidbit for you all to keep in mind. All right, so back to our farming analogy. We've prepared the soil, we put the seeds in the ground. Now it's time to water them. So we want to draw engagement, right? We've already built out awareness. Now we want to draw engagement and we want to get them to, you know, be looking at the floor plans page, look at the amenities, you know, maybe do, you know, engage with the chat bot on your website. And then, you know, like I said, social is a great full funnel solution. So that's another way that can get them engaged. And so here the messaging is going to be a little bit different. We're asking them to take action. So instead of these being like high level theoretical things like discover your space, elevate your lifestyle, things like that, those aren't really action oriented. Those are just like, hello, take a look. Here we're asking them to do something. So like view amenities, look at the floor plans, do some comparison. We're asking them for that initial engagement without just saying like, boom, apply now, right? We're remembering that these people are humans and that we're not just marketing to numbers. So, and then one of the best ways in the consideration phase is retargeting. I'll just touch on a couple quick things here. So most people on the line have probably heard of retargeting. Go to a website, you know, maybe look at a pair of shoes, then see an ad for those pair of shoes, right? So that's retargeting, and it's one of the best forms of, you know, furthering people along in that journey because they've already demonstrated a level of intent. And so you're just pushing them along. So it's something that doesn't require a lot of budget, and it makes a pretty big difference. But this is also a common misconception. You can't just start up a campaign for retargeting like day one. It's not a separate campaign type. It's not something where you just turn it on from day one. Retargeting is an audience segment that lives within your existing campaigns. So on pay-per-click, there's search remarketing. On display, there's display retargeting. Geofencing, there's geofencing targeting. Social, there's retargeting on Instagram, Facebook. So when you're working with your vendor or with us, just keep in mind that that is a specific segment within your existing campaign. And in order to run retargeting, you have to have people to retarget to in the first place. Like we need those users to come to the site. We build that pool, you know, using pixels. And then once it hits a certain threshold, like 1,000 users, we can begin that retargeting campaign. So for those of you that don't know how it works, pretty basic, but consumer goes to a site, visit the site, do something on the site, and then we retarget them with relevant ads. The other reason it's important, especially with display retargeting, is because, like Murray was going over the statistics about how many people spend time on Google and Facebook. Remember that Google's one website, like it's one.com. It's a big one, but it's one website. Same with Facebook, one website. So even though people spend a lot of their time there, they also spend time on millions of other websites. And so display retargeting is a great way to make sure that you have presence on those millions of other websites as well. And same with prospecting. So in your display campaign, there's, you know, prospecting segment where you're pushing out new ads, retargeting where you're retargeting people based on a certain behavior. And then just a couple of fun facts for you. So website visitors who are retargeted with display ads are 70% more likely to convert. 91% of marketers who use retargeting found it to perform the same as or better than search, email, or other display ads. And then 3 out of 5 online viewers notice and consider ads showing products they viewed from another page. So you all probably experience this in your real life. You might, you know, sometimes during the day with all our devices and work, we're like squirrels, right? We're like, oh my gosh, I got to answer this email. And then, oh, look at this thing on my phone while I went and got coffee. Oh, those shoes are cute, but I got to get back to my meeting. And then I might go to the website and then later see a retargeting ad, and I'm like glad for it. I'm like, oh, cool. I actually did want to buy those shoes or that bag, you know. And so I'm going to put that on my list tonight. And when I'm on my desktop and I can have a little more mental real estate, I'm going to take time and browse through that. So same thing with the property. So, you know, people do different things on different devices, especially, you know, depending on what you're buying. So it's a big buying decision. People like to, you know, they'll do some initial like poking around on their phone, get retargeted, and then they might want more space to do that on their desktop when they don't have other distractions. So anyway, that's why retargeting is fantastic when it's done properly. So search, couple of things here. So again, digital marketing has a lot of acronyms. So just so everyone's on the same page, search, also called paid search, PPC, SEM, AdWords. I think that's most of them. So when we talk about paid search, we're talking about, you know, Google AdWords, pay-per-click. So search is important because, you know, it's in that decision phase. And so it's users who have demonstrated a high level of intent. So display and social, they serve a very important purpose because you're creating that awareness. Search is meeting the demand that exists in a marketplace. So these people, you know, they've said, all right, I'm going to set aside what I'm doing. I'm going to take the initiative and I'm going to find a place to live. Very different from someone who's on Facebook and is like, oh, that place looks awesome. I'm going to check it out later. So they each serve a purpose, but, you know, when you use those mid to upper funnel tactics like social and display, what you're doing is setting it up so that when by the time they get here and even if they don't remember your property, they're typing in, okay, 1-bedroom apartment for rent in Buckhead, and then they go to Google, they see all the different results, they have that context because you've already invested time in building a relationship with that human being. So you want to be there. You know, you want to make sure that you are doing proper keyword analysis, that your text ad is composed properly, you know, landing pages. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that if we have time. Making sure your site's mobile optimized, obviously, and then making sure that your targeting is effective. So are you just targeting a radius around the property? That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to do, you know, a national campaign and keep the keywords very tightly knit. So for people that are moving from a different city, another way to do it is to, you know, if you are in Seattle and you have a lot of residents that are moving from Iowa, I'm just making that up, but then you might want to say, hey, we don't want to run a national campaign, but we want to run a national campaign in like Iowa and a couple other states. So making sure that you're being effective with your geo-targeting. And then one quick point that I want to address about geo-targeting. Everyone's confused about geo-fencing and geo-targeting. So I'm going to talk about it for 30 seconds. Geo-fencing is in-app advertising. It is you're putting a virtual fence, so to speak, around a certain property. Another word for fence is radius. Any campaign you're running should have a radius or zip codes or a geo-fence set up. So geo-fencing is not the only way to target a preferred employer, a shopping mall, competitors, any of those landmarks. You can do that in your pay-per-click campaign. You can do it in your social campaign. You can do it in your display campaign. So I know that geofencing is like a super shiny toy. It's very upper funnel, even more so than display. So it's not something that we recommend doing unless you have those 3 core channels, search, social, display properly funded for that market, and then look at adding in geofencing. So again, all the campaigns you run can be geo-targeted and can really, you know, can have that virtual geo-fence set up. So moving along, then also for your search, you want to make sure that you are utilizing retargeting. Google likes to be fancy and different, so they call it remarketing, same thing. And then, you know, a lot of things that we do, we have an engineering team, and they are awesome about building out custom scripts for us, especially for property management, for things that are going to make sure that campaigns are managed more effectively. One example right now, we had an issue ongoing with a portfolio where the phone numbers were being swapped out on the website pretty consistently without us knowing, which obviously affects the phone call tracking. And so there was really not a great way to know about that until you were, taking a deep dive into performance. And so our engineering team wrote a script, and basically we get instant notifications if a phone number is changed on the website. So a lot of cool stuff like that our team is working on. So when you're looking at all of your efforts, you want to understand the total yield. So what has all of this produced? So one important point here to understand is that you have different channels for different parts of the renter's journey, right? You have like display, things like that for building awareness. And then you have, pay-per-click for very bottom of the funnel. Each of your channels has different primary KPIs that should be measured. So your PPC campaign is not apples to apples with your display campaign, and the success of them should not be measured with the same metrics. So phone calls, form fills, specifically phone calls. I see this too. So you'll have like a display ad, and we'll get someone who says, oh, we want to put a phone number in a display ad. No one's going to pick up the phone and call from the display ad. This is not what people do. And it's not the purpose. It's to build that engagement. So anyway, so understanding like, how do I need to measure success from each of the different channels? So, whether it's with us or whoever you're working with now, make sure that on the reporting, you understand that, it's not just about phone calls all day. If you're running display social, it's about other things like engagement. So, when you optimize, if you want phone calls at the end of the day, then it makes sense to say, well, what do people do before they make a phone call on the website? Let's get more people to do that action that's one point upstream, and we're going to get more phone calls. So that's an important point. And then, understanding when I went over the hangover example and the initial, multi-touch example, what channels are contributing to the greater good? So you have like assisted conversions with paid search. So it might not be a phone call, but that paid search channel is, providing an assisted conversion. And then in terms of optimizing your approach, so making sure that you do have strategic budget adjustments. So this industry has a habit of like light switch roller coaster budget management. So it's like, okay, we're at 96%, turn the lights out, and then, oh my God, we're at 86%, like full blast, fluorescent lights all day, all night. So we want to make sure that there's a balance because it's more efficient over time. And so when we're talking about like the buyer's journey being farther out, you can be strategic with your budget. So when you are at 96% or whatever your target is, then, run more display. When you are, but also it shouldn't be where you currently are, it's where your trend is, right? So you want to be proactive. So in 60 days, your trend is at 93%. Just because you're at 96% today, don't turn out the lights. And so that's another situation that we see a lot. So, so be strategic with those budget adjustments. So work with us, work with your partners to make sure that those are on point. And then also always look at expanding your digital presence. So that's one of the cool things about digital is that it's always growing. So, connected TV is now a thing, and it's a big thing. So advertising on Hulu, things like that on streaming TV. So that didn't exist, however many years ago, but now it's a viable option for you all. So when we look at the impacts of the specific channels, some of you on the line, you might not be running paid search. So I would definitely encourage you to do so. Paid search is one of the most profitable forms of acquisition that there is on the planet for many businesses, definitely for property management. And if you're someone who says, well, I don't click on ads, you click on ads. And a lot of other people click on ads. It's a billion-dollar industry, and it works very, very well, which is why it's so huge. It's because it works. If it didn't work, it wouldn't be, people wouldn't spend billions of dollars on it. So, for those that ran search, 180% increase in conversions for this particular case study, 53% reduction in cost per lead, 333 increase in calls, as well, with only a 32% increase in budget. So looking at the effectiveness of search and social together, so this is across 250 accounts with search and social across a number of business categories. So people running PPC only, $20.60 cost per action, action being defined as a high level, high intent action. So not like a click, but phone call, form fill, something like that. Social only, $17. Search and social brought it down to $10. Again, because people have that context on social before they go to Google, before you're paying, $5 a click, $3 a click, you've invested to get in front of those eyeballs, for a few pennies for the impression as opposed to, $5 a click. Anyway, so 46% decrease in cost for action. Search and display, same thing. So $18 search only, $9 search plus display. So 49% decrease in cost for action. And then looking specifically at the property management space, so looking at across 30 properties for 3 months, we measured phone calls, form fills, lease now button clicks. So we had a 240% increase in actions per month for those that ran PPC, search, and social, as opposed to those that just ran search, and then 18% decrease in cost per action. So pretty significant across the board, $50, like 30 to $50. For some markets, it's even $120, but $50 is around the average cost per action in this industry. So being able to chop that off 20% is pretty significant, especially when you're looking at a portfolio of 30, properties. One thing too, a lot of people, they want to work like, okay, we're going to do our PPC with the PPC vendor. We're going to do our social with the social vendor. We're going to do display with display. We're going to do something else with someone else. When you have all these different vendors, you want to make sure that you work with a good partner who can help you work on an omni-channel approach, because if it's in your best interest to take some of your search dollars and put those into social dollars, you want to do that. But if you're just making everything in a silo, every single different vendor is just going to fight for those dollars regardless of what's in best interest of the community in both the short term and the long term. So look at ways to, consolidate your efforts, with fewer vendors. Other thing to think about too is just in terms of efficiency. I mean, a lot of you probably work with like 15, 20 different people on your marketing. So, I know that there are some things where the ILSs are consolidated, which is nice. You send out a special one time, goes to all the sites. But in looking at some of the other channels, I mean, if you have 7 different people you're working with on stuff, like 7 monthly calls, 7 different channels of communication, 7 different reporting formats that probably are not apples to apples in terms of metrics, 7 different relationships to manage. So just over time, I mean, all those things I just listed off, definitely like 20 hours a week 20 hours a month for whoever's managing all of that. And then if you look at that at a portfolio level, I mean, not only for efficiency, but when you consolidate both your vendors and your portfolios, then, you're able to have those global insights, you're able to leverage the data from multiple properties to further improve campaign performance. A lot of cool stuff that you can do. So something for you to think about. We have a couple minutes left. I want to get everyone out of here a few minutes ahead of time. So I'm going to go over something I think is cool. Hopefully you'll think it's cool because it can save you a lot of money. And that's maximizing your marketing dollars. So if we look on the left-hand side, we have impressions. So an impression is each time an ad is served, okay? And then that ad is served, next to the right, you have clicks. So people clicked on the ad. In between those two things, an impression and clicks, there's a whole set of variables that affect the rate at which people are clicking based on those impressions. Then we take a step to the right. All right, how many people, or we go to website visits, how many people, visited the website, and then how many people converted on the right. So from the time they visit the website to the time they pick up the phone, there's a whole set of variables that go into that rate. And then we take it a step further. Okay, so they get on site, they take a tour. There's a whole set of variables between each of these actions. So how many people are converting from tour to app to lease, and then also lease to renewal. So between each of these actions, you have a different set of variables. Some of them overlap, but it's a lot of information. And so when someone comes to us, from a previous vendor and they're like, we're trending down, we think it's because X, Y, Z, it makes sense to kind of plot everything out and make sure that you're aware of your numbers. So I wanted to give you just one quick thing that you can do, that's probably one of the easiest ways to get more bang for your buck with your marketing. And I feel like in this industry, it's probably one of the most underutilized things. and that is your website conversion rate. So in this example, we're looking at pay-per-click. So in this case, you know, we have impressions, so the ad is being served up. We have your click-through rate. You know, that is based on audience relevance, you know, creative, copy, bids, time of day, day of week, all those different things. And then they click on your ad. You have already paid for the traffic when they click on that ad. Check has been written. Check's gonna be cashed by Google. You've paid for the traffic. So by the time they get to your website, you want to make sure that they are converting at the highest possible rate. And so, you know, what variables go into your conversion rate, your website conversion rate? Well, obviously, you know, user interface, user experience design, the call to actions that are on the website, what images are being used, how fast is it loading? This is a common issue now, so we'll get people with like new fancy videos and they, you know, are slowing down the site load time. That's something to consider, as well as relevance. So like, what is the user looking for when they get on the website? So, so if you take a look at this example, so let's say you have a PPC budget of 5,000. So that's going to give you roughly 1,000 impressions. Again, this is an example, but 1,000 impressions with a click-through rate of 0.03, which is average for PPC. That's going to yield 3,000 clicks. Website converts at 3%. It's going to get you 90 conversions for 56 bucks a pop. So then if you take that exact same budget, again, same amount of impressions, same click-through rate, same number of clicks, your website conversion rate's 5%, you're getting 60 more conversions just by bumping that conversion rate up 2%. And then looking at 7%, now you're getting 200 conversions. You've done nothing different. You're spending the exact same amount on your budget. And then take a look at 9%. You're getting 270 conversions by getting your website conversion rate up to 9%. And now you're paying 19 bucks a pop instead of 56. So it's one very simple thing that you can do that's not completely, you know, dismantling your processes for marketing. And, you know, if you're thinking like, oh my God, I have to restart everything from scratch, you don't. This is a very simple thing that you can do that will help get better results. So the average, just to give you an idea, the benchmark is 5 to 10% for conversion rates. And so this is something that we are monitoring a lot closer nowadays, because it's just in this particular industry. Also, you have, again, everyone wants the apply now button everywhere. So like every investor, owner, they're like, we want the apply now button like everywhere on the site. That's fine, but that's not the purpose. The purpose of the website is to get people to the property and to schedule a tour. So looking at an example. So this is how the website was laid out. So we have navigation, and then we have call or text, phone number, apply, contact. Probably seems like it's in line with a lot of websites in this vertical, right? Probably doesn't look too foreign. But the thing is that if you look on the right-hand side, so when people get to a website, there's two immediate questions that they want answered subconsciously. They want to know, one, am I in the right place? Two, what do I do? Right? People they don't look at the website all day like you or I. They're doing other stuff. They're coming here. They have 2 seconds. They want to figure it out. So one, am I in the right place? Two, what do I do about it? So eyes go to the logo to make sure they're in the right place. Usually then they go to the upper right-hand corner. That's where people are expecting action. Then they're expecting the nav in the upper left. So I know people like to get creative and fancy with their websites and do neat things, but you can do that in a way that also makes you money. So a lot of times aesthetics get in the way of a website actually converting. Just understand that the better your website converts, more money you will make. Okay, so we have call, text, phone number, apply, contact. So if I'm a user and I'm coming here, call, text already, I'm like, well, I don't know. Should I call you? Should I text you? Should I text you? I don't know. I don't know you yet. Do I want to call you? Why should I call you? Apply, I'm definitely not ready to apply. I want to see the property first. Contact, well, why should I contact you? What I'd really love to do is just see the place. And none of these calls to action help the user do that, right? They kind of have to make those own conclusions on their own. And you might think, well, duh, like they're going to know to call us if they want to schedule a tour. People don't. They are like sheep online. So they'll do it, but they're not going to do it at a super high rate as if you were to help them along. So in this instance, what we did is we took out text. So it just said call, phone number, changed the apply now button to schedule a tour. But then got rid of the contact. And then, because, really, that's why you want people to contact you, right, is to schedule a tour. So why not just say schedule a tour? So then we left the apply now, but we moved it. So same website, but now you can see we have call, phone number, schedule a tour, apply. So for people that, you know, do want to come to the website and they're ready to apply, they can see it right there. For 99% of the users who are going to want to schedule a tour, when a user comes here, they see right away, oh, I'm in the right place. It's very obvious what you should do. This is obviously just by the placement of schedule a tour, the colors around it, you know, how do the colors coordinate with other things on the page. And we took away, you know, those competing calls to action. And so we had the website converted at 2% when we started the campaign. So cost per lead was $200. And then the website conversion rate after is around 12% with a cost per lead of $52. And so a couple considerations, it was the same budget during these different periods, same campaign types and traffic sources with stable seasonality. So, you know, there's going to be other variables that go into consideration with conversion rates, but it's not going to be like the time of year. Like your website's not going to convert at 2% one time of the year and then 12% another time of the year. There might be like a 0.5 point percentage difference. And certain markets do have different conversion rates on their websites because the traffic's a little bit different. Depends on how, you know, transient the city is too. You know, like SoCal, for example, their websites tend to convert lower, but that's just kind of how the traffic is. So making sure that whoever you're working with has that insight as well is super helpful. So yeah, so what we did is, you know, primarily just acknowledge the purpose of the website, that it's to schedule a tour, make it very, very easy, and then reduce the competing calls to action. So a lot of you, if you look at your website, you're going to see like, schedule a tour, call, apply now, chat now, like do all these different things. Like you're asking too much of the user. Just ask them like one thing and then make the other stuff available for those that really want it. And it can make a pretty big difference in your ROI. So some of the key takeaways for today, you know, we went over some insights. Hopefully those were helpful to you. You know, we talked about an overall approach, you know, how to seed, how to plant, how to prepare your harvest for the maximum yield. Went over some case studies as well as making sure that not only do you have a good, robust media mix, but that you are consistent with it. And it's like going to the gym, right? So you want to get in shape, you get in shape. You don't say, all right, cool, I'll see you in 6 months because I'm in shape, right? It's easier, it's more cost effective, it's less mentally draining than if you are just consistent with it. A couple things I'm going to point out and then we'll wrap it up. So AdTaxi, we are premier partners with all of the gorillas in the room. So Google, Facebook, as well as Snapchat. We won a Sales Innovation Award for one of the many tools that we've built. So cool stuff there. You know, fancy badges for saying that we're really good at what we do. Our campaigns perform like gangbusters and people love working with us. And then finally, for those of you that are interested, we are doing an offer for those of you on the webinar to do a free Google Ads audit and also a website audit to make sure that it's set up properly for the search engines as well as converting as high as it possibly can. So we're going to send out a link after in a follow-up email, so be on the lookout for that. And then that's it. For any of you that would like more one-on-one time, feel free to reach out to me. So my email's here, install@adtaxi.com. And if you want to learn more about AdTaxi in general, feel free to check out our website. So I hope that this webinar was helpful for you today. We're excited to help you grow your business even more and get your occupancy exactly where you want it. And with that, we will end. And everyone have a fantastic day.